Namanda, 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 Namanda.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Kind of a double opening. We're starting to have in-person services again. We're still going hybrid. This is also the first day back to our regular schedules at OCBC. Through the summer, we go to a kind of abbreviated adult study courses over the summer. That's from about after 4th of July and the first weekend after Labor Day. So we're back to our regular schedule. We have two ministers today. Myself and Reverend Wonder will be leading the chanting. We're not going to be sharing microphones. So today she will lead us in the Jusege on page 39. And we're also going to have a musical offering by Eugene Scott. And it's a little confusing because he's actually here. So, you know, and at a different time, he could have played live. But I was going to ask Eugene if he could please go to the mic and maybe introduce your musical offering, and I'll play it from here. All right, thank you very much.
시간야 고가 다이생 오간도 고그쇼댐님 도의지묘계 Namamida Butts Namanda Butts Namanda Butts Namanda Butts Namanda Butts Namanda Butts.
Thank you very much, Reverend Wondra, for leading our chanting today. One thing that we haven't been able to do during COVID, and there's really no way to backfill this, is to be able to chant in a room together and share our voices. So that's probably the one thing that we really missed over the last over a year and a half. There's no real way to reproduce that on YouTube or with Zoom. And I think Buddhism is a communal activity, and we're very vulnerable to not being able to meet together and actually chant. So I think we did the best we could, but it's really nice to have everybody back together in the same room. So this is a little confusing too. We're not yet ready to have in-person musical offerings, but maybe that's coming in October, November, December, January. So Eugene Scott is one of several OCBC members that make musical donations from their home. And he sent this to me, I don't know, I think it was in May, and we've been trying to schedule it. And so luckily he's here, not to perform, but to introduce.
Test. Good morning, Sangha. When I recorded this in May, I think, summer was approaching, and so the idea was of a wind chime or a bell that we hang out in front of our house. And so in Japan, it's a symbol of summer. And so my idea when you're listening is to imagine the wind slowly blowing and then catching the chime, and it starts to build, and then my idea was that it dissipated as the wind comes and goes. And also the idea was much like our verbal chanting, it was more of a sound sort of chant or bath. So when you're listening to it, try to imagine the wind blowing as we end summer now. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Eugene. That was excellent. It's also, he described it as a sound bath. So I'd like to bring that up later in my Dharma talk. So next we're going to have a selected saying. I try to find a selected saying that kind of fits a theme for my Dharma talk for today. And it also, I think, fits this musical offering. So if you could put your hands together with me. The Nembutsu, for its practicers, is not a practice or a good act, since it is not performed out of one's own designs. It is not a practice, since it is not good done through one's own calculation. It is not a good act, because it arises wholly from other power and is free from self-power. For the practicer, it is not a practice or a good act. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. So, thank you very much. Today my talk is called The Process is the Practice. There's a Christian minister in Lake Forest who wrote a book called A Life of Purpose. A Life of Purpose. And somebody asked Reverend Dewami once, what's the purpose of life? And somebody asked Joseph Campbell once, what's the point of life? What's the goal? And they both said the same thing. Joseph Campbell and Reverend Dewami said that there is no real point other than experiencing life, becoming one with life. It's a process. It's not something to be achieved. And so I wanted to talk about that today. But this quote can be a little bit confusing. It sounds like we don't do anything in Jodo Shinshu. It's not that we don't do anything, but it's how we do it. Right? So, it's not a practice in the sense that you're not trying to achieve some ultimate goal. It's an activity. It's an experience. You immerse yourself in the Dharma. And the sound bath is an example of that in terms of music. You're supposed to be engulfed by the music. And my wife, Linda's a yoga instructor. I found some good yoga music for her. And she said, well, it's a little too fast. I have trouble slowing down. And then the next thing was, there were lyrics. And I said, what's wrong with lyrics? They're beautiful lyrics. And she said, well, people tend to focus on the meaning of the lyrics and the language, and they start using their brain, and it pulls them out of their body. And they're not experiencing yoga with their body anymore. They're analyzing lyrics and meaning. And so, a sound bath has no lyrics. And you could say, well, why did he write this? What's the point? What's the meaning of the song? And it's the experience of the song is the meaning. So you could read in two ways too. You could read a book to get to the end. You could read a book to learn new facts and to acquire knowledge. Or you could just read and let the language wash over you. And you feel good as you do it. And it's an activity. So in our tradition, our practices are activity-based and process-based. And so I think this is what this quote means. We're not doing it to achieve. It's not out of calculation. It's not quid pro quo. It's not return on investment. It's something that you do every day, like breathing. So I have this quote for Jodo Shinshu. You don't have to do anything, but you have to do something. So just because you don't have to do anything specifically doesn't mean you can get away with doing nothing. So you got to find out what is that one thing. What is your practice? What resonates for you? There's no requirement, but that doesn't mean you can just kick your feet up and not do anything. And this is a great quote by one of my favorite speakers. It's Reverend John Turner. This is one of the quotes I like. So there's a book that we read for book club, and I've been referencing it a lot lately. Most books that we read in book club at OCBC are doctrinal books. They're theory books. They're books about belief or ideas or knowledge. And in the United States, I think, we kind of have this idea, if you want to change your behavior, you've got to change the way you think. You've got to come up with new rules. You've got to believe in something different. It's the mind is the problem. But in Eastern traditions, the problem, they attack the problem of the mind through the body. That if you can quiet the body the mind will follow. If you can focus on chanting, your mind begins to develop attention and mindfulness. So, rather than trying to use the mind to fix itself, Eastern traditions use the body. And so this book, I brought it kind of because we're kind of going back to school in September. This is 52 chapters, one a week. You read it very slowly. And he gives kind of an ideal. He presents a problem. He presents kind of a solution to that problem. And then he presents exercises and practices. And so this is by Rick Hansen. It's called Just One Thing. So I think he's saying, if you just did one thing, maybe 5 minutes a day, you can transform that into a lifelong habit that's effortless. So it's a different kind of approach. I heard a scholar once say that in the Indian tradition, there's this idea that if you have a practice that's incredibly difficult, really, really hard, it's more effective. And, maybe that's Bikram yoga or hot yoga, that attitude that if you lock yourself in a room and it's 100 degrees and you do 90 minutes of yoga, it's a given that that's going to be more effective. But there's another approach where you do something very small, very simple. There's really almost no level of ability you need. It's something effortless that you can convert into a habit that you carry on for the rest of your life. And scholars have said this is the only really effective way to change who you are, is to take a small activity and convert it into a habit. These big New Year's Eve resolutions, these things that say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, they fail about 85% of the time at New Year's. And one reason is they're too big, they're too hard. And the other reason is there's no process in it. Like just saying I'm going to lose 20 pounds is really not very helpful. It would be better to say, I'm going to take my dog for a walk around the block every night after dinner but before Jeopardy. And then your dog starts to nag you, it becomes a habit, and within a short order of time, it just becomes like a family tradition. And then you'll notice that you're beginning to lose weight, you're beginning to feel better, your back doesn't hurt, and you begin to want to do it. There's also, I wanted to show you this slide, this idea of self-power. It doesn't mean not trying. It doesn't mean not having any effort. I thought self-power meant, if you're against self-power, that means you weren't supposed to try. You weren't supposed to exert yourself. But it's a way of thinking. This calculated, if I do this, what do I get kind of thing is actually the opposite way of thinking if you want to immerse yourself in a process. And there's a famous scholar here, N. Watanabe. I thought it might have been Nori Watanabe from the Oxnard Buddhist Temple, a friend of mine, but it's actually a scholar in Japan. And he said, the problem is not effort itself, but with the attitude or motive or motivation behind the effort. So it's how we think of practice that's the problem. So, if you go to yoga, they call it chasing a pose, or you go to yoga to be a contortionist, you're wiping out all the spirituality and all the deep emotional feeling you have in that practice. I mean, you might as well just go lift weights then if you're going to do that. And a lot of people do this for marathons. I trained really hard to run a marathon, and I ran a marathon, and I ended up not running anymore because I achieved my goal. So that's a danger too. I wasn't able to convert that into a lifelong activity. So I wanted to give a couple examples on the internet. These are 4 really good videos. This is by Dr. Sri Kumar Rao, and it's called Plug Into Your Hardwired Happiness. And what he basically says is to be happy in life is to give yourself over to a process. And he says that the way we live our lives is we say, if I can achieve this goal, then I'll be happy. And he says, every time you achieve your goal, you're still not happy. And so you keep changing your goals. Like, if I could graduate from UCLA with my master's in mathematics, then I'll be happy. If I could get a job, then I'll be happy. If I could get married, if I could have kids, if I could make 6 figures, then I'll be happy. And he claims that that model is just fundamentally flawed. It doesn't matter what the if is. You will never attain happiness because you've never lived in a life of process. And he also quotes John Wooden a lot. So that is a major plus for him. John Wooden didn't really care about the score. He cared about how the team played and their chemistry. And a lot of times he wouldn't call timeouts during a game because it was up to the players to figure it out, right? They're on the court. He would be like, don't look at me. I don't have the ball. You have to figure it out. You have to become a team. Another one is Amy Cuddy. I think this is the first or second most popular TED Talk ever given. She says that the way you carry your body may shape who you are. So she actually said that if you kind of stand with your feet apart and your shoulders back, and you hold your head high, and you look people in the eye, you feel you have the mind of somebody that's confident. So she really talks a lot about how the mind will follow the body, and that's her area of research. And she gives examples in her own life. It's really a great video. I would show it to you, but I don't want to get in any copyright disputes, so I can only do this. This one I really like. Forget Big Change, Start with Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. He's the one who says the only way you can make major fundamental changes to your life is by taking something very small that you already know how to do and repeat it until it becomes a habit. So one example he gives is flossing your teeth. Like, I can't go to bed at night if I don't brush my teeth. I have to brush my teeth. And I have to put in my Invisalign retainer. I have to do that. I just can't go to sleep. But I have never really done that with flossing. And when I go to the dentist, she'll say, I usually floss the day I go to the dentist. So when she says to me, have you been flossing? I go, yeah, I've been flossing. I did it this morning. So he says, the problem isn't that I don't know how to floss. I mean, I know how to floss. It's really easy. I just haven't converted it into a habit. So he says, what you should do is just floss one tooth a night. Like just the easiest tooth you have. Just do that every night, one tooth. And over time, his contention is that it will transform into something that you need to do, you want to do, and you'll start doing all 32 teeth. So he says trying to use willpower, trying to, there's lots of different ways to affect change, and they all fail over time. So in the short run, you can use willpower. It's very powerful, but it's like rocket fuel, and it burns out quickly. So, if you want to cram for a test, you might be able to pull an A, but in the long run, that's not a sustainable plan. And then, again, Kelly McGonigal, she talks a lot about willpower. She says it's not a virtue. It's not something you're born with. There aren't strong-willed people and weak-willed people. She said this is a characteristic like anything else, and that it can be developed over time. So, if you want to be a better student, I would suggest studying. It would be better to study a half an hour a night than it is to try to cram before your test. So it's that kind of an idea. Just go to class. I would tell a student, if you want to raise your grades, just show up for class. You don't have to take notes. You don't have to study. Just listen and go to class. That might raise a letter grade alone. So, in this book, Rick Hansen, he talks about doing just one thing. You don't have to do everything in Buddhism. It can be overwhelming, but you need to find something that can be your practice. And that's kind of homework for all of us. Success in Buddhism isn't really based on science. It's based on an inner knowing. The practices are true because they're effective. We use science a lot in the West to justify things, but in Buddhist tradition, we do things because they work. We do things because they're effective. I mean, I chant because it makes me feel better. That's why I chant. We tend, in this book, to focus on practice over doctrine, less about beliefs and more about activities. And then he talks a lot about the law of little things, just like B.J. Fogg. It's the little things that make a difference in your life. If you think about the bad habits you have, they started with little tiny things that were converted over into a habit. So they're suggesting if you got some bad habits that you aren't thrilled about and they're hard to get rid of, you could do the same thing with good habits. You could develop good habits easily over time that are really hard to get rid of. There we go. Creating new habits. He talks about that in the book. He talks a lot about practicing with our bodies, like Amy Cuddy. And he doesn't talk so much about why or what, but he talks a lot more about how. So this is another thing that happens in America. We get a lot of what questions, like what do I need to do, and why should I do it, and what do I get? We don't get a lot of how questions. And then any practice could be an other power practice if you have the right attitude. So there were 52 chapters. I picked out 8, and I highlighted these 4. But these sound a lot like Jodo Shinshu. He talks about taking refuge, that we all need to take refuge and have confidence in something in our life. And we have to figure out where do we go for comfort and safety. You can aspire without attachment. Also, do what you can given your life. Even if you can't achieve the ultimate goal, you can still make a difference. And then lastly, accept the limits of your influence. So, I have limited influence, but I still can do what I can. So those chapter 35 and 36 kind of go together. So he talks about world religions being a refuge. He says one of his favorite refuges is practice itself. And he says it's the theme of this book. And he just keeps plugging away, and he gradually becomes more happier and more loving, and he asks, what gives you a sense of refuge? And then he gives little homework assignments. I take refuge in. It might be the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. It might be music. He also talks about attachment can be craving, and how to aspire without craving. And I think the way we do that is if you focus on the process and the activities and not the actual goal, I think that's a real antidote to being able to aspire effectively without craving. I once said in a Dharma talk that we shouldn't have expectations. And a gentleman said, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I expect my son to open the door for people when we go out in public. That's my expectation. And I didn't know how to answer him. But I thought about it a lot. I think you're not having expectations, a better way to say that is not being attached to the outcome. Like, if your son forgets to open the door when you go out into public, then as a father, your process is to remind him, show him, and have him reinforce it for the next person, and then the next day, and the next day, without getting angry and without a timeline, and someday he will open the door for someone. So that's the nuanced explanation I wished I would have told you. He also says that we can have a sense of learned helplessness. We can be overwhelmed by the news. We can be overwhelmed by COVID, by the political situation. So he really suggests that you objectively recognize where you, in fact, do have some power, and that you can take actions that are available to you, even if they must be only inside your own head. So he really talks about ways of not feeling helpless, and that eases a sense of depression or anxiety or pessimism, low self-worth. So what you do is you want to find things you can do. They may not be revolutionary, but they contribute to a better community and daily life. This one I like a lot. The other side of it, of being helpless, is not a good idea, but also trying to control everything is another extreme that can cause great frustration. So in Buddhism, it's much of a paradox. You can't control everything, but you can certainly control some things. There are some things in life that you can do, and you should do them, and you should always try, independent of the ultimate outcome. We do have limited influence over others, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't still use kind words and compassionate action. So I wanted to close with this one example about process. We're the Nishi branch of Jodo Shinshu, and there's a Higashi branch. And I went to ordination in Japan in the second ordination in 2012, and I was a little overwhelmed. I kind of felt like a sailboat my sail was up, and there was wind pushing me through life. Like things were accelerating and happening pretty quickly. Like I was thinking, what am I doing in Japan to get, my second ordination? Like this is happening, and I had a lot of gratitude, and I was very excited, but it was a lot to take in. And we were walking around sightseeing the day before the 10-day retreat began, the 10-day training, and I saw this sign on a Higashi temple, and I found out later they come up with like a yearly slogan or something for their tradition. I think we should do that. I thought this was great. This was like their slogan of the year or something. And if I ever put this on my Zoom background, Higashi ministers always recognize it and really like it. And luckily, it's in Japanese on top, of course. And then in the middle, bottom, it's in Spanish, but my high school Spanish isn't very good. And on the far right is Chinese. I know some kanji, but I couldn't sight read this. But luckily, on the lower left corner, it's in English. And I just happened to see this sign over my shoulder, and it said, "Now life is living you. Now life is living you." And I thought, wow, that's how I feel. Rather than me trying to control everything and manage everything and achieve things, I felt like through Buddhist practice, rather than me living my life was now living me. And so that's the change in orientation between a self-power person and an other power person. And when you look at them, you can't really tell the difference because they're doing all the same activities, but it's how you think of it, right? It's how you conceive or conceptualize your life. So, I still go to work, I drink coffee, I do all the things I used to do, but now I feel like I'm kind of being pushed through life. I'm part of something bigger than myself. I'm not really in control, and yet I can still take action. And so I think it's a feeling of giving yourself over to process, that you really feel that you're interconnected to everything. And I think from a Buddhist point of view, life has always been living you. You didn't have to do anything for life to live you. It's always been like this. It's just that we create this world, that we kind of create our own little manufactured world that we live in. And we see things a certain way, and we believe that we're responsible for things and that we achieve things. And it's like, no, you were always being helped by others. It was always your tailwinds that were pushing you through life, and you've only been focusing on your headwinds. And so I think this book and this attitude would be really good for us to take forward starting this new year, is finding out, something small. I always tell people, rather than meditating 90 minutes on a Saturday morning, it would be so much better to just do maybe 5 minutes a day. That is so much more effective than these heroic, practices. Just ring a bell, just ring a bell every morning when you get up and listen to it. And when the bell stops, go to work. That would be an important practice. So in our tradition, it's these very small, anyone can do it. You don't have to be a religious savant. You don't have to be superhuman. Ring a bell, light an incense, bow to a statue. Just do that. And you might not be a morning person, so you could do it at night. But over time, that practice will grow and flower, and it will have a huge impact on your life. So again, you don't have to do anything, but we all really do have to do something. Just coming to church on every Sunday for a year makes a huge difference. Just that alone, I think, is a big improvement. So I would like to close with Gasho. The Nembutsu, for its practicers, is not a practice or a good act, since it is not performed out of one's own designs. It is not a practice. Since it is not good done through one's own calculation, it is not a good act, because it arises wholly from other power and is free of self-power. For the practicer, it is not a practice or a good act. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo. Thank you very much. And since we don't have an MC yet, that's another thing that'll be the next thing we do too, is have an MC for our services. Reverend Wonder and I collect the religious announcements, so we're trying to do that. So we're really happy to announce that Saturday, the 18th of September, is going to be our Fall Ohigan Seminar, and we're lucky double because we were able to get Reverend Harry Bridge again from the Oakland Buddhist Church to come and give us a talk. He gave a talk last year on Buddhist values that was really meaningful. This will be at 10 a.m., and this will be on Zoom, so it will be interactive. And there is a link, there's an email address here, ocbc.seminar.info@gmail.com. If you email to that address, we will be happy to send you the Zoom link. And we will record that. I'm not sure if we're going to post it to YouTube or not. And then on Sunday, September 19th, we will have our Fall Ohigan service. And we have lots of different types of services now because of COVID. So because Sensei lives in Oakland, he recorded his talks already. So this next Sunday, it will be a pre-recorded YouTube service that will premiere at 10 a.m. on our YouTube channel. So it's in the can. It just needs to be released. The only thing, though, is that means nobody will be at church on campus next Sunday. So we won't be having meditation service in person next Sunday. So that's like a detail we have to remember. So, and then I am teaching a seminar. It's kind of about this talk, actually, how gradual practices can lead to sudden insight. It's Saturday, September 25th. It's from 3 to 4:30 p.m. It will be on Zoom. It's a Southern District BEC Tri-Temple seminar. And there is a link here for you to register, but it's not human readable. So you can go to the vbt@vbtemple.org to get more information. And again, you would register, and they would send you the Zoom link for that. All right. Thank you very much. We'll close with Gasho now.
Namo Amida Butsu, 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 Namo Amida Butsu.